Okay, so this video helps us explain the essential elements of project-based learning. PBL is sometimes confused with simply having students do a hands-on activity or make something, like a poster or a model. But we think to really be PBL, a project has to have 8 essential elements, which you can see on this diagram. In the center are your learning goals for students, so we'll start there. First is significant content. A project should be focused on teaching students important knowledge and skills based on your standards and key concepts in a subject area. It should be significant to the teacher and to the students, as well as, of course, in terms of what districts and states and important tests measure. In the past, some people thought that PBL was guilty of being content light. They thought that sort of non-content outcomes like student engagement and soft skills were overemphasized. But we think you need both content and skills, and that's why the railroad track is zipped together here. They're parallel tracks, content and skills, that get students where you want them to go. Remember, in the project in the video, Mr. Simmons thought about his standards and knew that microorganisms and diseases were an important part of those standards. They'd probably be on the state test, and it was significant to him and his students. 21st century skills are very easily taught in project-based learning. In fact, one of the best ways to teach those skills. 3 of the ones that you see a lot are critical thinking or problem solving, collaboration skills, and communication, especially presentation skills. And these are skills that young people need to be more successful in the future, in school, in their life, and in the workplace. And we think PBL, as I said, is one of the best ways to teach those skills, but you need to really teach them because students can get better at them if they see them modeled and talk about them and practice them. These skills also need to be assessed so students can get more feedback on how well they're doing. And these kind of skills will become even more important in schools if they're explicitly assessed and reported and factored into grades, information given to students, parents, even employers, colleges, and so forth. In the video, remember, students engaged in critical thinking and problem solving and some creativity where they weren't just following a recipe for how to solve the problem or answer the driving question. They had to think of their own products and their own presentations and analyze and synthesize information, troubleshoot problems that came up, and so forth. They also had to work in teams. They were collaborating when they did their research and created products and planned their presentations. And they practiced presentation skills when they used the internet to find information and created visual media and made their oral presentations. In-depth inquiry is required of students in a project, and by that we don't just mean looking stuff up on the internet, not just research. It's a way of thinking inquiry that involves asking questions, finding answers to help support your conclusions, finding resources, thinking of new questions as you get deeper in. People often think of inquiry in science experiments or investigations or research papers, maybe in history, but any project can have inquiry. For example, even creating a mural would require inquiry about what's the best location, what material should we use, what's the most appropriate image, or designing a website, who's the client, what do they want, what does a visitor to the site want to see, how can we make it work well for those visitors. There's also an element of innovation in inquiry where students are finding their own answers to questions, their own unique products. They aren't just repackaging information or building something from a kit or following directions. In the video, we saw the students asking in-depth questions about why their classmates were getting sick, how are diseases transmitted, what germs are, and how they affect the human body, and so on. And Mr. Simmons provided some of the answers, but also the students had to dig for some of their own, and they thought of new, deeper questions along the way. A driving question organizes the whole project. It sort of captures the issue or the problem or the challenge for students to address. It sort of frames the project as answering a question, which reinforces that idea of a project being about inquiry. A driving question has 3 main characteristics. It should be open-ended. There's more than one possible answer. It's understandable to students. It engages them. It doesn't sound like a textbook or a teacher. It sort of inspires them and focuses them. And thirdly, it's linked to what you want students to learn. To answer it, they've got to learn the content and the skills that you want them to learn. In the video, the project, the question was, how can we not get sick? And this driving question focused all the work the students did during the project. Some driving questions can be more philosophical or abstract. For example, the one for this project could have been something like, how can little things have big effects? Or you could have a more specific and very task-focused driving question. For example, this one could have been, how can we create a presentation to tell elementary school students how not to get sick? A need to know. This is a real fundamental, important concept in project-based learning. It's very important differentiation from other teaching methods. The project creates the need to know the content in the students. Traditionally in school, students learn stuff because they have to. It's going to be on the test. They want to please the teacher or their parents or the grade, or that might say it's more important for you later in life in school. But that may motivate only a few students. But if they're really exploring an interesting question or meeting a challenge, students are more motivated to learn. They have that need to know. Also, if they got to present to an audience, that creates a need to know. The need to know starts with an entry event, which sort of engages students and gets them going and sparks their curiosity, leads them to ask questions, like Mr. Simmons had a discussion with the students about why so many students were absent. And they also had a need to know the content and skills students learned because they were going to be presenting their products to the elementary school audience.